the actor yelled at the elderly woman. Clint Eastwood watched in silence. No one knew what would happen until Clint rose from his director's chair. It was 1992. The high desert outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. Day 43 of a 60-day shoot for Unforgiven, the western that would redefine the genre and win Clint Eastwood his first Best Picture Oscar. The production was running tight but smooth. Clint's productions always did. No wasted takes. No ego tantrums. No chaos. Just work. The crew had learned quickly that Clint Eastwood sets operated differently than other directors. There were no raised voices. No theatrical displays of artistic temperament. No 20-minute discussions about motivation before a simple scene. Clint would set up a shot, explain what he needed in 10 words or less, shoot it once or twice, and move on. "Let's not burn daylight," he'd say quietly when things moved too slowly. The pace was fast but never frantic. The atmosphere was professional but never cold. Everyone knew their job. Everyone did their job. And if you didn't, Clint wouldn't yell at you. He'd simply look at you with those pale blue eyes and you'd understand. Do it right or go home. Martha Brennan had worked on the Unforgiven set since day one. She was 72 years old, a wardrobe assistant who'd been in the film industry for 40 years. She'd worked on dozens of westerns. The real ones, back when John Ford and Howard Hawks were making them. She knew period costumes better than most historians. She could identify the difference between 1870s and 1880s hat styles at 50 paces. She'd taken this job because she loved westerns and because Clint Eastwood had a reputation for respecting his crew. She'd heard the stories. How he learned everyone's name by the second day. How he ate lunch with the crew, not in his trailer. How he never kept people waiting. It was true. All of it. On the morning of day 43, Martha was making final adjustments to Gene Hackman's costume before a crucial scene. The actor playing one of the younger supporting characters, call him Tyler, was nearby, waiting for his call time. Tyler was 20 years old. Fresh off a successful television series. This was his first major film role, and he'd been cast because the studio wanted a recognizable face in the supporting cast. He had talent. He also had an ego that hadn't been properly checked. He'd been increasingly difficult as the shoot progressed. Showing up late. Arguing about costume choices. Complaining about his trailer, about the food, about the schedule. The crew had learned to work around him. But that morning, something snapped. Tyler was scheduled for a 9 a.m. makeup call. He showed up at 9:47. Martha had been holding his period vest, the one he'd wear in the next scene, for nearly an hour. When he finally arrived, she approached him with the vest and a polite smile. "Good morning, Mr. Tyler. We're ready for you in wardrobe whenever." "Where the hell have you been?" Tyler interrupted, his voice sharp and loud enough to carry across the dusty staging area. "I've been looking for you for 20 minutes. Martha's smile faltered. I've been right here, sir. We were expecting you at 9. "Don't tell me what time I was expected," Tyler snapped. "I don't answer to you. Your wardrobe. Your job is to be available when I need you, not to lecture me about call times." Several crew members nearby stopped what they were doing. This kind of thing didn't happen on Clint's sets. Not like this. Not publicly. Martha kept her composure, decades of professionalism steadying her voice. "Of course, sir. I apologize. Let me help you with. You know what your problem is?" Tyler continued, his voice getting louder, enjoying the attention he was creating. "People like you forget who matters on a film set. Actors are what audiences pay to see. Not wardrobe assistants. Not camera operators. Not any of you people running around with your little jobs. We're the talent. You're the help." The staging area had gone completely silent. Martha's face showed hurt, then something closer to quiet humiliation. She was holding the vest in hands that had been handling costumes since before this kid was born, being lectured about hierarchy by someone who'd done 3 films. "I understand, sir," she said quietly. I'll just. And this vest is wrong anyway, Tyler said, snatching it from her hands roughly enough that Martha had to step back to keep her balance. The buttons are off. The stitching is visible. Did you even look at this before you brought it to me? Do you even know what you're doing? Martha opened her mouth to respond, but Tyler wasn't finished. You know what? I'm going to talk to the costume designer. We need someone competent handling the principal cast. Maybe you should be working on extras or something more your speed. At your age. Clint didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. 50 feet away, Clint Eastwood sat in his director's chair, a script on his lap, a cup of coffee going cold in his hand. He'd been reviewing the day's shot list when Tyler's voice had first risen across the staging area. Clint hadn't moved. Hadn't reacted. He'd simply watched. For 6.5 minutes, Clint sat absolutely still in that chair and watched Tyler humiliate a 72-year-old woman who'd shown up at 6 a.m. to make sure his costume was perfect. The first AD noticed Clint's stillness and felt his stomach drop. He'd worked with Clint on 3 films. He knew that stillness. It wasn't calm. It was calculation. Gene Hackman, who'd been sitting in his own chair having his makeup touched up, caught Clint's expression and subtly shook his head at the makeup artist. Stop working. Watch. The script supervisor closed her notes. The cinematographer lowered his light meter. The grips stopped adjusting equipment. Everyone who'd been on this set for more than a week recognized what was happening. Clint Eastwood was watching someone end their own career, and they were doing it without any awareness of the consequences being calculated in that director's chair. Tyler finally finished his tirade. He threw the vest back at Martha. She caught it against her chest, and turned toward his trailer. Get this fixed in 20 minutes or I'm calling my agent, he said over his shoulder. Martha stood there, the vest clutched against her body, her face flushed with embarrassment, her eyes wet with tears she was too proud to let fall in public. And then Clint Eastwood stood up. It wasn't dramatic. There was no chair scraping, no sudden movement. He simply rose from his seat with the unhurried grace of someone who knew everyone would wait for him. He walked across the staging area toward Martha. His boots made small sounds in the dust. The morning sun was behind him, casting his shadow long across the ground. Tyler was halfway to his trailer when he noticed the silence. He turned around. Clint had reached Martha. He stopped beside her, his presence immediately shifting the entire geometry of the situation. He didn't look at Tyler. He looked at Martha. Ma'am, Clint said quietly, his voice that familiar gravelly near whisper that somehow carried across the entire staging area. How long have you been working in films? Martha blinked, surprised to be addressed directly. 41 years, Mr. Eastwood. 41 years, Clint repeated, nodding slowly. He took the vest from her hands gently, examining it. And these buttons? Authentic period? Yes, sir. Hand-sewn. Accurate to 1880s Wyoming territory. Stitching? Hidden stitch work, sir. It shows slightly in bright light, but on camera it will be invisible. That's how they were made in that period. Clint turned the vest over in his hands, his examination thorough and respectful. Beautiful work, he said. Then he looked at her directly. Thank you for being here at 6 o'clock this morning to make sure we had what we needed. Martha's eyes filled with fresh tears, but these were different. Clint handed the vest back to her carefully, then finally turned to face Tyler, who stood frozen 20 feet away. What happened next would be discussed in film schools and on film sets for the next 30 years. Clint didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He didn't lecture. He simply looked at Tyler for exactly 5 seconds of complete silence. Then he spoke. 7 words. Delivered in that same quiet tone he used for everything. Get your things. You're done here. Tyler's face went white. What? Clint didn't repeat himself. He turned to his first AD. Call his agent. Tell them he's been released from his contract. Personal conduct violation. Get the studio on the phone. We'll recast today and reshoot his scenes next week. Clint, wait. Tyler started. Clint held up one hand. Not aggressively. Just a simple stop gesture. Then he spoke again, still quietly, but with absolute finality. I don't work with people who disrespect my crew. Martha's been doing her job since before you were born. She showed up on time. She did beautiful work. And you treated her like she was beneath you. He paused. On my sets, nobody is beneath anybody. We're all here to make something good. Together. If you can't understand that, you don't belong here. Tyler tried again. I was frustrated about the schedule and... I don't need to hear it. Clint said, his voice still level, still quiet. You made your choice when you spoke to her that way. Now I'm making mine. He turned back to Martha, dismissing Tyler completely from his attention. Ma'am, I apologize you had to experience that. It won't happen again. Thank you, Mr. Eastwood, Martha whispered. Clint nodded once, then walked back to his director's chair, picked up his script, and looked at his first AD. Let's reset for the previous scene while we sort this out. Tell everyone we'll have a new cast member by this afternoon. Warner Brothers will have to live with it. Subscribe and leave a comment. Because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. Tyler stood there for another 10 seconds, waiting for Clint to change his mind, to engage in argument, to negotiate. Clint didn't look at him again. He was reviewing his shot list. Tyler walked to his trailer, packed his things, and left the set within an hour. His agent called Clint personally, trying to smooth things over. Clint listened politely for 30 seconds, then said, Your client was disrespectful to my crew. That's non-negotiable. And hung up. Warner Brothers executives called. Clint explained the situation in one sentence. He treated a 72-year-old woman like garbage in front of the entire crew. I don't work with people like that. The executives, knowing Clint's reputation and track record, didn't push back. The role was recast that afternoon. A character actor from Los Angeles flew in that evening. They reshot Tyler's scenes over the next week. The film didn't suffer. In fact, most people who worked on Unforgiven said the new actor was better, more professional, more respectful, more committed to the work. But the real impact of that morning wasn't about the film. It was about what happened immediately after Tyler left the set. Clint called the entire crew together. All 140 people. He stood in front of them, hands in his pockets, and spoke for maybe 90 seconds. I want to be clear about something, he said. This is a professional set. That means we treat each other with respect. Not because of job titles. Not because of whose name is on the poster. Because we're human beings doing hard work together. He gestured toward Martha, who stood near the back of the group. Martha has forgotten more about authentic Western costuming than most of us will ever learn. She's been doing this longer than I've been alive. And whether you've been doing this for 40 years or 40 days, if you show up on time, do good work, and treat people with respect, you're valuable here. He paused, looking across the faces of his crew. I don't care if you're an Oscar winner or a production assistant. I don't care if this is your first film, or your 100th. On my sets, we're equals. We're collaborators. And if you can't treat people that way, you don't work for me. The crew was silent. Not uncomfortable. Proud. That's all I wanted to say, Clint finished. Let's make a good movie. He turned and walked back to his chair. But before he sat down, he stopped by Martha's station. He handed her something, a business card. If you ever want to work on any of my future projects, he said quietly, you call that number directly. You'll always have a job. Martha kept that card for the rest of her life. She worked on every Clint Eastwood film after that until she retired at 81. Unforgiven went on to win 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. At the Oscar ceremony, Clint thanked his crew by name. Martha Brennan was one of them. Tyler never worked in major films again. Not because Clint blacklisted him. Clint never spoke about the incident publicly. But word travels in Hollywood. Crews talk. And no director wants someone on set who treats people that way. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The morning after Tyler was fired, the crew arrived to find Clint already in his chair at 5:45 a.m., coffee in hand, ready to work. No drama. No speeches. Just professionalism. That's who Clint Eastwood was. Not the man who shouted the loudest. The man who stood up when it mattered.